There they are, the competitors of Season 3 of the Echelon Racing League, as we return for another virtual season of racing on in-real-life courses with our pro men up first today, along with our para and hand cycling competitions, and then our pro women wrapping things up later this morning. Brad Soner here with Chad Andrews as we get ready to get back into it with our virtual season of racing. Chad, I know this for a lot of riders is super exciting. For some riders, not so much. You're either an indoor rider or not. You either love being on the trainer or you just don't have that gene. I am super excited to see these virtual specialists here in the Echelon Racing League and some crossover from a lot of the in real life events that you and I announced during the summer.
Yeah, it's kind of a love-hate relationship for me owning 5 training centers before COVID. I spent, and a lot of my clients spent a ton of time on the trainer. Then COVID hit, and now we're kind of outside of that. And now Echelon Racing has continued with the whole indoor training scene. And now that we're having racing, I think it's kind of cool. It truly is a test of mental fortitude to be isolated in your garage or in your own little pain cave for sure.
One of the best parts about the Echelon Racing League is seeing all the individual pain caves. Can't wait to see the new setups for the 2022-23 season. Let's talk very quickly about what they're setting up for this season, starting off with the Sunny King Criterium today. Then they'll move to the IU Health Momentum Indy, where they'll race in just 2 weeks from now. So you got a week in between. Now, in between, we will be having Ride with the Pros here in the Echelon Racing League all season through November, December, January, and then wrapping up our league championships in February, kind of an off week where you'll have a chance to get on the same courses that the pros are going to be racing on. So create some really cool opportunities. Then we go to the first stage race, December 16th, 17th, and 18th. 3 days in a row of virtual racing, Chad, is very different than a single Saturday morning race.
Oh, stage racing on a trainer. Man, that is going to take some serious mental fortitude for both the pro men and pro women. And ironically enough, Brad, the recovery from doing a training race, if you're out doing a ride or a race on the road or in the dirt on single track, the mechanics are a little different. You know, you have to force yourself to get up and out of the saddle to stretch your hip flexors, stretch your legs out. On the trainer, it's very rare that you will find riders being up and down, moving back and forth on the saddle as much as they do when they are out on the road or on their mountain bike. So yeah, the recovery is going to be incredibly important. Not only the recovery, but the stretching, get those hip flexors loosened up, because being on the trainer racing for 3 straight days, man, that's going to be some fun to watch. And also the next day, it's like, how you feeling, guys and gals? And they're going to be like, oh my God, I'm so cracked.
Well, that takes us all the way through February, where our Echelon Racing League Championships at the end of February on February 25th to wrap up the virtual season, and then it should be just about time to get back onto bikes in real life. Now, today with the Sunny King Criterium, let's talk about this course. Pretty straightforward, 4-corner criterium down in Anniston, Alabama, just about hour and a half, 2 hours west of Atlanta, right in downtown. This is one of my favorite criterium courses of the year, not only because it's great for the spectators, but they have this awesome Noble Street Festival right at the start-finish line. But Chad, if you're not an uphill sprinter, you may not like this one as much, because an uphill drag out of turn 4 could cause some problems for the sprinters on the last lap today.
Yeah, the years that I did it, actually you and I worked a few years for one of the fantastic events that Sunny King is. It's a standard 4-corner crit. It's actually kind of long. And turn number 4 has always been very precarious for some of the beginners and even some of the leads, because when you come out of turn number 4, heading up towards the finish line on Noble Street, there's this dynamic of, in all bike racers, when you see the finish line, you have a tendency to hit the throttle quick and jump out of the saddle. But that drag up the hill, I've seen so many racers lose it at the line because they didn't wait long enough to launch their sprint. And if there's a headwind on the uphill, you've got to wait longer. So theoretically, we don't have to worry about the wind today, but we definitely still have to worry about waiting and being patient on the jump to the finish line.
All right, getting down to start time. As you see, the riders starting to ramp up the power here. One of the unique things about racing on RGT, once that clock hits 0, it starts registering power immediately. So you'll see all these riders in the Zoom room ramping up their power in the 5 seconds before we get started. That sends them off, and we are under full power, off and rolling with the Echelon Racing League season number 3. Well, very important to see who gets the early separation here. This is sort of the story of virtual racing on RGT. It's not a question of if, but when we see these separations happen. We will see a small group form at some point today. Even on a criterium course like this, it becomes really, really tough to stay with the group. All right, now you're starting to see that separation up at the front. This is what we're talking about. You can see the power zones of these riders making moves up towards the front. You see a lot of orange and red up here. Gonçalves, you see over on the left-hand side of the screen, using that power to get up to the front. Again, you're not going to win the race right here, but you will lose it. So we're watching these riders really all fight for the position up at the front. But one rider making an early jump off the front here. We'll take a look at that. I don't think this is going to last long, but it will lift the tempo and put some of these other riders on notice.
Yeah, this is actually, Brad, the very front part of the bike race is where everybody expends a lot of their initial energy. How many bullets do you have? Well, guess what? With Bjorklund right there off the front and the attack, that is a serious effort. You can look at their watts per kilogram. Brad and I will be talking about just how important that is in relative to elite and professional bike racing. And Bjorklund right now seems to, now he's getting dragged back. Brad, you talked about Gonçalves.
Yeah, I think Bjorklund just got a powerful lesson in how tough it is to be solo off the front here in RGT. Again, real life physics apply to this game. So if you go solo away off the front, you're fighting that wind drag all by yourself. They've built drafting and things like that into RGT. So all that comes into play. It is significantly harder to be solo off the front, as we saw our first attack just learn.
Great in-screen shot right there with Bjorklund. He is now, as we talked about earlier, Brad, he is up and out of the saddle, and he is putting a big effort in at the very beginning of this bike race. How much is he going to have left at the end with this massive effort that he's putting out on his trainer?
And now Hodges getting overtaken by Harberg here. Another one of the really unique things about virtual racing chat, especially early on in the season here, there will be a lot of familiar names that we see from past seasons of the Echelon Racing League. Maybe riders that we see racing on platforms like Zwift or Rovi from other virtual events. But for a lot of these riders, it'll be the first time that they meet. You got to get the feeling for these new guys, and they won't know some of the sort of ins and outs of the riders that we've had a chance to learn about over the last couple seasons of virtual racing or racing on other platforms. So it's always fun to see the different personalities get shaken out on the first couple days of racing.
And especially this time of year, Brad, for most bike racers, this is so early in, well, technically this is off season for a lot of riders. So to put out this kind of effort this early in their off season is really hard to do. And again, it goes back to physiology. During the middle of a race season, a true actual physical outdoor race season, you have a lot of, shall we say, bullets to spare. Here, a lot of these guys are this is their first effort, so they're definitely going to get that crit cough, as we call it. We can explain what that is later on. With actually the Canadian up front, Verslees and Harberg trying to chase back on, dropping somebody that just went back like they were dragged back by a stone.
You know, this is where patience will come into play, because it's really easy to see a rider like Verlet off the front here and say, I got to go, I got to follow this move. But there's also an element of just trying to make sure that you don't blow up too early. Remember, they're doing 30 laps on this course today, which translates to somewhere around, let's say, an hour of racing somewhere. So they still got a lot of racing to go here.
I mean, some of these guys that are doing this race, very rarely do you ever get to do an hour race. I mean, an hour race is a long time, especially on a trainer and especially during this time of the year. And you're going to hear me reference this time of the year as Versleys right there for Restart Racing in his own little pain cave there. Good lighting, but the legs are screaming. But his legs are lit up like the background and the lights that are in his little pain cave, Brad.
I like this. He's got a little rocker setup going underneath. It's maybe one of our top pain caves of the year so far. We'll check in with a few more of those throughout the day. We also have our para and hand cycling racing getting underway. We're going to be checking in with them throughout the day as well. One of the really cool things about the Echelon Racing League and really pioneering the para cycling element of virtual racing. You know, until Echelon stepped in, there were no para or hand cycling avatars in virtual racing. And so last year, Echelon Racing League, working with the Paralyzed Veterans of America and RGT, to launch the very first para and hand cycling race series. So we are super pumped to have them racing with us this year in the Echelon Racing League Season 3.
Brad, that is so cool. I was very fortunate to be able to do Para Nationals this past year in Chattanooga. And this is a scene that I'm very familiar with, being able to do world championships as well. Seeing these hand cyclists and these para athletes just crushing themselves on a trainer. What I'd really like to know is how that trainer setup looks like. Again, this is a new kind of thing that we're doing at Echelon Racing. Good deal, good job by the great team and great people at Project Echelon and Echelon Racing to have this kind of format. That is a killer cool setup. I'd like to see kind of a pullback on the camera to see what it really looks like.
We saw a lot of riders getting their setups dialed in over the last couple of years, as well as the pandemic forced a lot of us into virtual racing, whether we liked it or not. But now I think people are really starting to see the value in virtual racing, the ability to train, especially cold climates. Like, we'll see a lot of riders in their garage or outside, even with hats and gloves, where maybe it's not appropriate to ride outside. So it's been really cool to see all the different training setups and seeing how some of our para and hand cyclists have adapted to virtual racing.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a pretty big group still intact. But there is a lot of power that's being put out. Again, Brad and I will reference watts per kilogram. The bigger guys obviously can put out more power, but really watts per kilogram are going to tell us the full story, especially with indoor training and indoor racing. How much power, how much kilograms do you put out relative to your body weight? And that's, I think, the misnomer. A lot of spin classes do these algorithms where how much power you're putting out, and everybody can look up on the board and they go, oh my gosh, that guy or that girl put out so much power. But it really is based on your size and your weight, not how much total power you're putting out. So a lot of these guys, a lot of these women, you can see if they're doing over 5 watts per kilogram for the entire hour, that is legit. So that's some of the metrics and data that coaches look at to determine, hey, look, some of these riders, whether they're doing Zwift or whether they're doing Echelon Racing, we can truly determine not how talented a rider is, because obviously we have 4 factors about cornering, descending, climbing, etc. But the true watts per kilogram will tell at least a basic story of the talent level of a rider.
When you can already see some of the drafting starting to form down in the bottom left. The hand cyclist got a nice line going here. That is what you can expect to see more of. One of the really hard things about setting up para and hand cycling is getting the drafting right. Chad, you know from watching a lot of these para hand cycling races in real life, that drafting becomes so important. Those bump bars on the back of the hand cycles. So being able to build those dynamics and those physics into the game, really, really impressive.
Yeah, there is something that when we first got started with indoor training, 20 years ago, we never had any of those components. The physics weren't built in. Now that they are, and doing para events and watching these para athletes literally drafting wheel to wheel, front to back, and how close and how comfortable they are getting a draft. And Brad, we talked about it. I don't know how many races we've commentated together. It's probably close to 100. We talk about it all the time. How much energy you save by drafting off the rider in front of you. And guess what? Echelon Racing has built those physics in, so you do get that tiny bit of respite. The rider in front of you, he's 100% or she's 100% into the wind, as we like to call it. The rider directly behind them, especially the para athletes with the dynamics of the profile of the hand cycles, man, they are getting the benefit of 30% savings in energy.
All right, well, as we are underway, our first few minutes of racing in and done, we're starting to get some separation up at the front. Good time to check in with our in real life race director, Marilyn Hill. I had a chance to catch up with her earlier today as we prep to get some virtual racing underway. Marilyn, congratulations on launching your very first virtual Sunny King Crit. I know you're also gearing up for the in real life Sunny King Crit coming up May 6th this year. What are you most excited for in the 2023 edition?
Thanks, Brad. It's nice to be here. We're excited for the first ever Sunny King virtual event. You know, our event is a little bit later this year, so I'm really excited for that. A couple more weeks in spring weather. Will be a little bit warmer. And our kids race, I'm most excited for our kids race. Oliver, my son, will be coming to Anniston this year. And he'll be in the kids race with all the other little shredders. It'll be a good time for me and for Brian, and for him. Yeah. It's put on by the YMCA. We love the YMCA all over the place, so we're excited for that.
Sounds like you've got a first-time racer on your hands. Any tips for any pros, masters, or kids races coming for the first time?
You know, eat well, enjoy the Southern hospitality. Within our event, we have a couple meal services for our pros and for our elite categories. You can come on Friday night and get in on the welcome dinner at the Bicycle Association there, NEBA. You can come and eat with us then. The Saturday event, after the races, after the pro races finish, we have a big pasta and salad dinner at Classic on Noble for the pros. It's just down the street from where the awards are, and we do the awards right after the pro races for the pro fields only. And then they come and eat. So it's a great chance for everybody to catch up on the race and mingle and meet new people and check out our race headquarters at Classic on Noble.
It's a blast every year. Can't wait to be there May 6th.
Yeah.
But first, let's get back to some virtual racing.
Okay, good luck, everybody. Thanks, Brad.
One of the great people that make bike racing great, Marilyn Hill, the race director down there in Anniston, Alabama. Again, getting ready for May 6th this year, a little later than their normal April race dates down in Anniston. But we've had enough chilly days in Anniston, Chad, that I think a lot of riders will be happy to bump that one a little bit later.
Yeah, it's always a suspect time of the year down in Anniston because it's really at the spine of the Appalachians. So it can be tricky during that time of the year. It could be freezing cold or you could have tornadoes. So smart move on Marilyn and all the people down there at Classic on Noble. And it's when I hear Marilyn and Brian talking about a child, I'm like, oh my God, I remember Marilyn when she was still racing. So kudos to her, you know, jumping into the promoters pool and, you know, talking about her husband, Brian, who I know well, and their young one. So it's kind of cool to see the past of bike racing now become the new future.
Well, Anniston changing every day. It's been incredible to see how the local course has changed down in Anniston, seeing all kinds of new buildings springing up in downtown. They're really revitalizing that Noble Street, Main Street area in downtown Anniston. Big part of that is the PR director down in Anniston, Alabama, a guy named Jackson Hodges, who is one of my favorite people every year when we go to Anniston, as he's just one of the most welcoming guys that you'll ever meet, and so proud of what they're doing down in Anniston. So we had a chance to get a welcome message from Jackson to invite everyone to Anniston this year.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the virtual Sunny King Criterium. We are so excited to have viewers from all across the world, the United Kingdom, China, and the United States joining us here for our virtual competition. We are appreciative and we can't wait for things to kick off. Be sure to tune in at the information here on screen to watch this virtual race. It's going to be a thriller. And while you're at it, be sure to pull out your calendar and mark it for the date below, May 6th will be the Noble Street Festival in Sunny King Criterium, and it is a exhilarating time. You have racers going over 100 miles an hour through tight twists and turns in downtown Anniston. We would love to have you there. Come one, come all. There is something for everybody to do. It is the best time of the year, hands down. Anniston is a beautiful city full of historical buildings, cultural significance, and a rich history. We have a vast outdoors, many mom and pop shops. There is something for everyone to do. So we would love to have you here in the model city, Anniston, Alabama.
Some of that southern hospitality that you just can't get enough of. Again, May 6th, I know I'll be there and hope to see as many of these virtual racers there as well. Good time to get the tune-up right now.
Be curious to think what the men and women think about, well, the men right now, but the women coming up soon. It's like, wow, was the actual course harder or was the virtual course harder?
Well, if you ask this Canadian on the front, Verlies, I would say he's all about this virtual course. Guys going all in on these moves off the front. Remember, this is the second time we've seen Verlies make a move like this. He was the one that launched early, like 2 minutes into the race, and now he's trying to go again. He's got no company, though, so this dude is locked in. He's got one card to play, and that is a solo break here with plenty of racing to go.
One has to wonder, as Lucas right there from Restart Racing is off the front, did he actually, my guess is that he's a triathlete because I see a treadmill next to him. Did he actually do a run before the race? That is something we're going to have to get some details on after the race is over.
This would be a perfect setup for a triathlete if you're trying to log into those long, steady base miles. The problem is on RGT, and you're seeing him do it here, into those corners, you have to let off the gas. RGT will scrub your speed off of the corner if you're taking that corner at an unrealistic speed. So you're not going to go 30 miles an hour around the corner, and the game will actually punish you for trying to put power into those corners. So you have to coast through the corners, just like in real life. You can't pedal full gas to get through a corner. So for triathletes, sometimes that presents a problem because, well, they're not the most technical bike riders, let's say. A triathlon is all about these long, steady efforts. You're not turning as much as criterium racers are. So for a lot of triathletes that come to virtual racing here in RGT, that is a rude awakening when you start to learn the physics of the game.
Yeah, and that is fascinating, too. Right now, though, Brad, Verlies is saying, hold my beer. I'm just going to go off the front. Looks like Harvard.
And now he's been
Hill. Oh,
yeah, so he's been caught by a big group of riders who saw exactly what was happening. Now, this is where you start to see some of these familiar names like Kevin Bouchard-Hall, one of the best virtual racers out there right now. This guy represented the United States at the Esports World Championships last year. So we've got a few riders in this field who have been selected again for the USA Cycling Esports Worlds team. So that just speaks to the talent here. But this is where we're starting to see the experienced riders coming to the front right now.
Oh, support. We got, oh, now that is the way you do it, Brad. That's how you race virtually. You have somebody in your family literally up next to you going, come on, dig deep, dig deep, dig deep. We did see, I think it looked like Tim Rugg. He was up there. Bouchard-Hall, Zach Gregg, of course, of Project Echelon. So some of the bigger names that I'm familiar with in the actual real world of announcing is there's Kevin Bouchard-Hall. Head down. He is not going to give us anything, Brad. He is absolutely in the box, it appears.
So this looks like a technical issue to me. I think they're working on something with the setup down below. Maybe the front wheel could be the handlebar. The power is still registering in RGT, so I don't think it's like a Bluetooth or computer setup issue for Bush. Looks like maybe the front wheel block. Sometimes you'll see riders lift their front wheel up to get it even when you're on a trainer. I'm not sure what the pit crew is working on here for Bouchard-Hall.
Yeah, it looks like we got the jack man and the wheel man in there, the wheel woman in this case, fixing it all. Kevin definitely embracing the Movember thing as well.
Well, doesn't look too stressed because he's got one off the front in Harberg trying to go solo. Now, again, the odds of a solo move like this working out very, very low, but that same thing applies in real life racing, I guess. Why go into a breakaway when you know there's a 1 in 100 shot of you making it work? Well, the answer is because 1 in 100 is better than nothing.
So you're saying there's a chance. Harburg actually backing off the throttle a little bit, trying to get back into the slipstream. He's actually, you know what, Harburg has been, at the, as we say, at the very front end of the bike race, the sharp end. And bam, man, they just gobbled up Tim Rugg. I'm assuming that's Tim Rugg. Now near the front, Kellison. So there is a nice mix of Americans and international riders making their way towards the front end of this bike race.
I can almost guarantee you that the rider who wins this race will be a rider that we don't see at all, a rider that's just sitting in this group right now. Because if you're on the front burning energy, you're going to be wishing you had that back in about another 20 minutes from now when we start to get into the last couple laps of racing here. So I think the smart riders who end up winning today are somewhere back in the, let's say, mid-pack, in the sort of lower teens, mid to high 20s, somewhere in there. That's the perfect place to be, just sitting in, just like a real life race. It's not always the strongest person that wins the bike race, Chad. Sometimes it's the smartest.
Smartest, you got it. There's Rugg right there. Speaking of a smart bike rider, Tim is spending some energy hoping to drag a few other riders out there with him. Harburg again counters. Brad, you and I can, because I did Aniston for many years, and you and I did it a couple years together, and then you've been kind of the principal guy down there. How, out of 1 out of 10 races, can you remember, both in the pro women and pro men, has a breakaway succeeded? I'm going to say maybe 25%, 30%.
Yeah, that probably sounds about right. It's certainly not unheard of in Aniston, especially because of that long straightaway. If you put some effort in, you can get away and stay away. But it's always been a group that's able to get away. Maybe 2, 3, 4 riders, something like that. Yeah. We've never had a solo escape that stayed away. So, and I don't think that'll be the case in the World either. No matter what Oliver Dowd thinks, trying to get away solo here. Now, take a look at the red bar below his name. See his name tag hovering just above the rider avatar head, and he's got that red bar below. That is his power zone, showing where Dowd is in relation to his maximum power. So these riders have to put in their different levels of power, and then the game, RGT, is able to measure their wattage and figure out where they are relative to their minimum and maximum numbers. So now guys like Dowd and Jaeger putting in big watts on the front. When you see Jaeger go red, you know they're doing huge watts up on the front. Jaeger, one of the strongest time trialists in the country right now, one of the best guys on these virtual platforms, and now he's moving up to the front here. So you're seeing a lot of riders take this one seriously. Clace going as well. He raced with Jaeger last season, so this is a guy that knows when Jaden Jaeger goes, I got to go too. You can see the Jaeger effect on the front of this race right now.
Yeah, and it's a very tough decision to make on whether you're going to force yourself into a move. You know who's going up the road. Most of these riders are very familiar with each other. They realize who has the ability to win the race in a breakaway or not. And Brad, it's very much, politically speaking, like it is in professional bike racing on the road or on a criterium. If you see a group of riders go up the road and you realize not only is the team represented, but a powerful and strong rider that meets your abilities up the road. Yep. At that point, it's either you got to go or you got to decide on whether you're going to sit back and hope that they come back. So there is some definite dynamics going on, whether it's like a chess match, just like on the road. You can see it exactly the same way here on RGT.
The other thing I love about the Echelon Racing League, a taste of some American criterium racing for guys like Walter Claes here out of Belgium. Now, they're not used to the American style of crit racing that we do. It's so unique to the American racing scene, this sort of short circuit race format where you're doing these 90-degree turns. You also have to remember the roads just aren't the same as they are in Europe. Like, we have these big, wide, open left and right-hand 90-degree turns, and a course like Aniston, you won't see those very much in Europe. And so these guys have to get used to racing the American style of criterium. They've got criterium-like races over in Europe, but there's just nothing like a U.S. criterium.
Well, it's almost kind of like some of the riders, when they come over, they found it's very similar to what a Commerce is, but American-style crit racing, there is a lot of contact. I mean, you will be touched, especially in the elite race. Now, unintentionally, sometimes intentionally, but you will be bumped frequently because of the accelerations and decelerations into the corners and into the turns. especially towards the end of the bike race, everybody's fighting for real estate. So that's some of the things that some of the European riders had to get used to. Not only that you're turning every 10 or 15 seconds or 30 seconds, but the contact is way higher than a normal race, except outside of a Kermesse in Europe.
You see how quickly that first turn comes right after the line that Bouchard Hall just took, just like the real-life course, because remember, these are real-life courses loaded into the RGT game. So the distance in between corners is exact to the inch as it is in real life. So it's a really cool opportunity for these riders to get used to a course, see a course for the first time, and train up on it as well as they get ready to tackle the in real life version on May 6th. Over to our para and hand cycling underway as well. Sorry about that, Chet. Just watching our para and hand cycling races that, again, started just a couple minutes after our elite men. Now, the para and hand cycling riders are on a different course than the Anniston Crit course because it's more difficult for para and hand cycling riders to corner, and it scrubs so much speed off of their course. We use a different course for them. It's more similar to like a marathon course, like a New York City marathon course, where you'll be able to roll through a lot more. So that just makes the experience a little bit better for our para and hand cycling athletes. So they're on a different course than our able-bodied criterium racers right now. This was some feedback that we got from para and hand cycling athletes after season 2.
Yeah, it looks like Kuman's doing a good bit of work on the front of our para race. They are actually, the paracyclists are actually taking advantage of the draft way more, and particularly the reason in this scenario is because you have a few riders that are up the road, so they're doing what we call trading pulls. One rider will pull for, say, a minute or two, then the next rider will pull through. So they're actually sharing, as you can see, these two para riders, sharing the energy and sharing the load as they continuously create a larger gap from the chase.
Now, these guys don't have any direct communication between the two of them. Of course, they could text or call each other, but most of these riders aren't directly in communication. A lot of teams or riders will have team chats on an app called Disc. They'll be able to listen in or try to link up with their other riders, but for the most part, these riders will either just be silent in racing, or they'll be using the new feature on RGT that has proximity voice chat. So just like in real life, now you can chat with riders that are around you. If you're in see on the left-hand side of your screen right here where these two hand cyclists are riding together, they would be able to voice chat with each other because they're close to each other. Now, once you get like 10 or 15 feet away from that athlete, just like in real life, you can't hear them anymore. So kind of a cool opportunity to maybe come up with some tactics, try and strike a deal up at the front of our men's H3 race right now.
If in fact they can actually talk right now. I guess that's the thing. And you know, when you're in a bike race and you're in a breakaway, your conversation is very much like, your turn to pull through, elbow flick. That's about all you can get out. Brad, very interesting too, here at RGT that we put in kind of in those brackets, you know, what category they are, whether it's H3 or H4. So that's kind of neat that, that this RGT platform actually identifies the riders and which category they race in as far as hand cycling. Yeah,
oftentimes you'll see riders in the, racing in different categories on the same course. Now they race together but are scored separately. See on the left-hand side of the screen there are the current standings on course with Kuman and Kavlonin on the front, and then Andre a little further back to Jones. Then you get into some of our H1 category like Sopanin in 6th place, go down to more H3 participants inside our top 10. So it's a good way to tell the different categories apart. We asked them to put their category in at the end. Very strong H3 and H4 representation in the races out there today. So a pair of H3 riders up at the front. And then we'll see if Andre, our leading H4 rider, can catch up to the pair of H3s, but that's going to be really tough. When these two guys are working together, that is a major advantage to any riders trying to catch on to a cooperative group of even two. Having just one other rider out there to help chat makes a huge difference in terms of the physics here on the RGT game.
Absolutely. And interesting, it's the Finns have really got it stacked up the front with Kovalainen, Arte, and Sopanen, but one would have to guess that it's based on my knowledge or a little bit of knowledge of the weather, It's probably really dark and really cold in Finland, so I can understand why the Finns are riding really well here, because they're probably spending a ton of time on the trainer.
43 degrees in Anniston, Alabama right now. It's even getting chilly down south where we would be racing in person right now, although it is going to warm up, obviously, throughout the day today. The other thing you have to think about, Chad, we talk about the weather, but how about the time zones for riders in Finland? We're on Eastern Daylight Time here at a 10 o'clock start time. We had an issue last year with European riders get into these races. It would either be really early in the morning for them or really late at night. So it's another one of the growing pains of virtual racing, trying to bring riders from all over the world together all at the same time sometimes proves logistically difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's 32 degrees in Helsinki at 5:35 p.m. So there goes Zach Nair. All right, Zach, little counterattack. Somebody we haven't talked about lately, but Zach is kind of a guy on the crits, season, if you want to call it that.
Zach Nair was the USA Cycling Esports World Championship coach. He is a cycling coach in real life as a racer, and they put him in charge of sort of the tactics, strategy, training, setup, and all of that for the Esports World Championships last year. A guy who knows a little something about virtual racing, probably one of the best qualified guys in this race to be riding on the front, from his experience, from his coaching perspective, and from his physical ability, his physical performance in real life and in the virtual racing world. So this is a real threat. Guys like Nair, Jaeger, these familiar names that we see on the front, you can see how nervous that made the field. Sam Sable here had to jump up to the front and said, "You're not going anywhere, Zach. I know exactly who you are."
Exactly.
Beautiful counterattack here from Oliver Dowd. This is how you have to do it. Just when Nair gets tired and pulls, Dowd goes again. And you know he's going hard because he's in the red power zone here. You see that red bar below. In fact, we can see his wattage on the screen here, Chad. The upper left corner shows sort of a running graph of their last, let's say, 30 seconds of power. You see how this one is all up and down. A lot of big spikes in here for Dowd. Doing 570, 600 watts, somewhere around there. Is that a lot? Put that into perspective for me, Chad.
500 to 600 watts is a substantial amount of power. Again, I guess it goes back to the conversation we had before about the size of the rider. But again, we can mitigate the questions by looking at their watts per kilogram. And Bouchard Hall is putting out 6.2. Dowd is putting out somewhere around that. So 500 watts. If you're doing 500 watts for a minute, that's usually a pretty good Cat 3, Cat 2 rider. Some elites can get up to 700 watts for a minute. So when you start to see in those kind of numbers for that extended period of time, that lets you know not only are they putting on a big effort, but they're also supremely talented, and they are really good at indoor cycling racing, and one would think that would transfer outside.
Well, it looks like these two Restart Racing riders were trying to link up. Bouchard Hall getting up there with Dowd, as they got themselves a little gap. Looks like Eric Hill making his way up to the front of this group as well from Project Echelon. But now Bouchard Hall looks to have gotten the whatever technical issue was all sorted out. And now Bouchard Hall on his own as they go inside the last 10K of racing. Just ticked in under 8 kilometers until the finish line.
Yeah, it looks like he's got a little TRX action or something familiar. So little strength training. It's great to see the inside of somebody's little workout, otherwise known as our pain cave, with his strength training and his treadmill, and right now his puddle of sweat that he's clearly, that is going to be a massive cleanup in the Bouchard Hall house.
He's making an all-in move right here, because look at the separation happening. 5 riders going clear here. They've got a gap to the rest of the group. And now if these guys link up, those other riders have a real problem on their hands. Bouchard Hall has started a major move here as they're coming up just outside of 4 miles of racing to go. About 4.5 miles at a little over 7K to go to the finish right now. These guys know it. Now, this is just like the real-life racing, Chad. There is a temporary alliance being formed with these, let's call it 5 riders on the front. They all want to try and get away from this field so they don't have to deal with a field sprint. And Bouchard Hall is the driver in this group. He's in charge. He's saying, all right, guys, here's what's going to happen. Here's the power that we're doing. Here's the speed that we're going to try to get away. This is Kevin Bouchard Hall's world, and we're just living in it right now.
Virtually living in it. Tim Rugg obviously is having, born in 1985. He is well known as a good time trialist. So obviously somebody like Tim Rugg, even Bouchard Hall, trying to get up the road, force the chase. This is their strength. They want to be solo or in a select group of time trialers that can continue to push the pace. Here's what they're saying essentially, Brad. We don't want this to come down to a sprint.
So Rugg, you talked about another rider that just qualified for the Virtual Racing World Championships coming up here. So potentially a world champion caliber rider in the field here, and that's what these guys are worried about. Now, they'll recognize these names. Names like Bouchard Hall, Rugg, those are names that they'll know from both in real life and virtual racing. No hiding there. These European guys, though, they've got the big advantage. They've got the unknown card to play. For guys like Harburg here, they can try and catch Bouchard Hall, Nair, Rugg, those guys off guard.
Brad, that's a good point. This is the first race of the season. So essentially, these riders are just now familiarizing themselves with this group as Bouchard Hall again pushing the pace, trying to get away in a kind of a solo move. Ideally, he'd like to have a couple riders with him, but it doesn't appear that Kellison, Cobotix, Harburg, Persky, and Rugg are going to let him go.
Now, over in that right-hand column, you can also see the distance to the leader. The very right-hand side of that column shows the distance in meters to get to that front rider, and then the rider that we're following is highlighted with a darker bar on the left. So you can see as we're following Cobotix right now, it's going to give the distance in relation to the rider that we're following with Cobotix riding on the front here. So that just gives you an idea of what those gaps are, and there's nothing right now. They succeeded in bringing that one back. We are all back together as they go 5K of racing.
Yeah, we don't have much time left. If you're not a sprinter, now is your time to get away. And as we normally say when we do commentary for live racing, Brad, the noose is starting to tighten. There is very little room for any rider that's a solo rider to get away. The sprinters and the sprinters teams are now starting to take the throat of this bike race and tighten the noose.
So Jaeger, not a sprinter, decidedly not a sprinter. This guy is a Masters time trial national champion on the road in real life. So what Jaeger is trying to do here is win this race from 3 miles out. This guy can't sprint for his life. If $1 million was on the line, he couldn't win a sprint in a million years. But this guy can win bike races all day long by doing things like this. Jaeger is incredibly dangerous from 3 miles out. And if they don't take this move seriously, they are watching this bike race right away, because again, this is a guy who's ridden on the Esports World Championship team, a reigning Masters time trial champion on the road. Now he's got Harburg and Rugg coming up to him. These are the only 2 guys that had the legs to come up to Jaeger here, and that's going to be a winning move of the day here, Chad, as they go inside 5K. That's less than 3 miles to go, and now Jaeger has been caught as Harburg comes up. It didn't work out for Jaeger today. The timing just wasn't there, or maybe the field was a little stronger than he anticipated.
Man, Rugg and Harburg doing counter-punch are starting to run out of energy as the peloton has decided, as, of course, our Canadian. We saw him early, Brad, kind of went quiet for a while. Maybe this is the move by Versleys from Canada.
I love the aggressive racing of this guy. No holds barred. Throw it all out there and see what sticks. Remember, Versleys was the first attacker to get out of the group. And now he's trying to go again late here, coming off of his teammate Jaden Jaeger's move. Maybe it was the old 1-2, maybe trying to set up Versleys for a longer attack as they go inside 4K to go.
Brad, he doesn't even look like he's working hard. It's amazing to watch the Canadian. Probably on the trainer a lot because it's gotten awfully cold. If he's anywhere near Toronto, one would guess that the weather has been suspect. So these guys have been logging serious miles as Versleys just goes over the top, and he is putting the hammer down, Brad. This could be a well, it's potentially a dangerous move right now.
You can see how focused he is on the screen in front of him. See how he's locked in? That's really hard to do when you're riding on the trainer because it's so boring, but that's one of the cool things about RGT. It makes that riding more engaging, and that's exactly what he's doing. One, he's looking at the riders behind him, and I think two, he's probably looking at his power, trying to keep that as steady as he can. You want that to be sort of slow and steady. Now, obviously not into the corners. He lets off there as they make that turn, but I think he's watching, kind of like your tachometer on your car, right? When you've got a wonky something going on in your engine, you don't want to push it too hard, so you try and keep that thing below 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 RPMs.
Oh, Verslace is falling like a stone as the counterattacks are now happening. Verslace sat up a little bit, Brad. That looks to me, and he's telling me everything. He tried his effort. He is going to pull the pin on this one.
Well, that'll be the second restart rider to have a go at it. Jaeger going to counter off of it. So it was the 1-2-1, we'll call it. I thought Jaeger was setting up Verslace, but it went Jaeger setting up Verslace, Jaeger, and now Tim Rugg going to counter that one.
Looks like Hill becoming a factor as well. Harrisburg, Davies, we haven't talked much about the Brit. Kolksy, Marichak, Klevgard. Got a good mix of Americans and Europeans that are throwing bombs at each other right now.
All right, now down to 1.5 miles of racing to go, right around 2.2K, just as he comes back into turn one. So only a few laps of racing left for Tim Rugg. Little late putting the power back on coming out of the corner. Rugg still getting those turns dialed in. Again, he is new to this RGT platform. He normally races on the Zwift platform, which is a little different in the physics. So I think Rugg is learning some lessons out there in the final 2 laps of racing as we go inside 2K to go.
And you could see very evident that the guys that are in the peloton putting out between 2 to 4 watts per kilogram, Tim Rugg is having to put out 6.4 watts, between 5 and 6.4 watts to keep that gap high. So that, too late. Tim has thrown out a bullet. That's probably going to do it for Tim, and it looks like we're going to have a bunch gallop to the finish, Brad.
Well, the breakaway riders tried. They tried to spoil the day for the sprinters, but looking more and more like this one's going to stay together as we go inside 1.5K to go. Less than a mile to the line now. This is Canadian Travis Samuel on the front, but there are about 20 riders that all have a shot of winning this race today, picking up some lap traffic for Samuel, and now you're going to start to see these big moves being launched. Once they go inside 1K, once you get down to that last lap of racing, or even out of that last turn, that's where everyone opens up. Here goes Peter Olenichek from Project Echelon Racing trying to have a go. Verslace goes again. Zach Gregg starting to move up. So all the heavy hitters getting to the front as we go to 1K to go.
Yeah, and the cream is now right at the top. You have Kellison also there. So it looks like we have Americans that have swarmed the front.
All right, inside the last kilometer, down to 900 meters. Zach Gregg has a little bit of a gap here. Verslace still trying to come up over the top. Olenichek is there as well. The 2 Project Echelon riders locked on. This is just like the in real life edition of the Sunny King Criterion where they set the lead up going to the line. Greg has Olenichek right on his wheel, but here comes Roca. Roca coming up late. Will he be able to hold on here as the American Roca makes a late surge at 500 meters to go? He's still got a gap.
That was a heck of a counter right there. It's Kellison, Haran, Roca, and Herberg, who has been all over the front of this bike race, now on the front, Brad. This is getting exciting, as you can see right now. The pain is evident, and now up and out of the saddle, putting out huge watts to get the W.
300 meters to go. Mason Roca still away. Has about a, we'll call it 20-meter gap. Everybody into the red zone. Kevin Bouchard-Hall, Zach Nair trying to lead the charge back in the field. Will they catch Roca on the last 100 meters? I don't think they're going to get there, and Mason Roca will spoil the party to take a solo win off the front. What a move for this guy. Way to counter. Project Echelon had the perfect lead out with their 2 guys. Roca comes over the top and wins in the last 600 meters. I told you it would be someone who we didn't talk about for most of the day. Roca played it smart, sat in, and used his energy when he needed it in the last kilometer of racing. What a ride for Mason Roca.
What a counterattack. And from so far out, we talked about it earlier. You're like, Chad, what do you think is the defining moment and defining kind of intricacies of the race course here in Anniston. And it's like, hey, you go too early from turn number 4. Rocco's like, psh, hold it, Chad. I'm going to go from further away. I'm going to go from turn number 2 and get the W.
And I love seeing how just cooked these guys are after the race. There's not much that you can do. Just try and recover. We do see a lot of the puke buckets used towards the end of the race. When you go from 100 to 0 that quickly, sometimes it takes the body a while to adjust to that one.
Tip of the cap to Roca. Heck of a move. Gotta give it to him. And of course, you know, the post-race get-together, you can't really do it virtually, but it's kind of nice to see. I'm sure all these guys are kind of on a quick chat or a Discord afterwards and saying, God, dude, that was so hard. What a great move. But it was. Roca with the move there for 606 Racing.
The last riders finishing up. We'll also check in with our para and hand cycling finishers. A few riders still dangling off the back of our elite men's race. Those are probably riders that had mechanical issues. Sometimes you lose connection, have a computer issue, something like that. That'll cause riders to drop off the back. Back over to our para and hand cycling competition. It's like Charles McDonald over on the right-hand side of your screen in the C4 classification, leading the way over Joe Bernier. And then our H3 rider, Kuman, leading the hand cycling competitions.
And again, you can look to see the Finns have got the top 6 stacked. Now, how it all kind of works out will be interesting to tell. But, you know, typically known for hockey, right now they're being known in the RGT world, and Echelon Racing is very accomplished and very, very good bike racers.
We should also point out for the hand cyclists, you see there has now been some separation up at the front. Remember, we had 2 guys riding together last time we saw him. Kuman had some company, but he has since separated with about a 40-meter gap back to second place on the left-hand side of your screen. So that separation starting to happen here, and it looks like maybe happening on an uphill section. They're on about a 4% gradient right now. You can see that in the upper right corner of the left side of your screen gameplay. That is the same screen that Kuman is seeing right now. So it's on about a 5% uphill ride on the way over. So as we keep our eye on these guys, sounds like we are just about ready to grab a word with our elite men's race winner, Mason Roca. So let's go over to our SIS Zoom room and see if we can grab a word with our winner. Sorry about that. We'll try and get Mason's audio dialed in here, see if we can grab him. Still working on it, sorry.
Just sitting there and looking at each other on the downhill, and so I decided this is a good time to try and go for it. And I think no one really went with me for a little bit, and then by the time they realized I'd gotten a big enough gap that I was able to get away.
Talking about the RTG system, now what this race did is that it required a lot of power out of everyone, like a lot of watts. Can you talk about specifically this race and how it's going to prepare you for the rest of the season going forward? Yeah,
I mean, you know, a lot of these riders do both Swift and RGT, and the dynamics are different. And so you really have to understand kind of how the drafting works, how RGT works around the curves. And obviously in any of these races, the gradient really matters. And so I'm a really heavy rider, and so that I get affected both on the downhills and the uphills in much more different ways. And so start the season.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on your win. Go out and celebrate it. And thank you so much, Mason. Brad, back to you.
Thanks, Emma.
Well, congratulations to Mason. Hope to see him at the In Real Life Sunny King Crit. With his win today, he will earn a free entry to the In Real Life Sunny King Criterium for May 6th. So hopefully we see Mason out there trying his legs in the real world in Anniston. Obviously has some very strong legs in the virtual world here, Chad. So wrapping up our hand and para, 16K to go in the hand cycling, 19K to go for the paras, and get ready for our elite women coming up next. We're going to take a quick break here from the Echelon Racing League, and when we come back, we've got more racing with hand cycling, para, and elite women coming up next.
Jackson Hodges here with Main Street Anniston, and do I have some exciting news for you? It's the Noble Street Festival in Sunny King Criterium, the biggest event in Calhoun County each year. You don't want to miss it. There'll be a free kids zone, food, vendors, all sorts of things. We'll have combat parks, so be sure to come down to experience this once-in-a-lifetime event.
Sunny King Automotive Group is celebrating 100 years in Anniston. Please join us in marking our centennial anniversary in our hometown. From all of us at Sunny King Ford, Sunny King Honda, and Sunny King Toyota, we thank you for 100 years, and we look forward to many, many more. Sunny King Automotive Group, serving Greater Calhoun County since 1922.
This is the sound of connecting.
Good morning.
Of learning, creating, competing, bonding.
How's he doing? A lot better.
This is the sound of fast, reliable internet. A fiber-powered network.
All right, push.
Delivering speeds up to 1 gig.
Absolutely.
And whole home Wi-Fi. So all your devices stay connected. This is the sound of Sparklight. A stronger connection.
My name is Dr. Alan Lim. I'm an exercise physiologist, and I've spent most of my career working with professional cyclists. For years, I've been getting riders to ride on static trainers that don't move. But now, with the Infinity technology by Ceres on the MP1 platform, you have fore-aft movement as well as side-to-side movement that ultimately greatly enhances comfort. Every single contact point can move in a more natural way, and over the long haul, what that means is you don't get beat up by your static trainer. With just that little bit of motion, you start to replicate what you feel in the outdoors, and that changes the entire experience. I think that one of the big reasons for that is that we're naturally tuned to want to move. Our vestibular system, when it's activated, ends up, creating, I think, a sense of harmony or joy that just isn't the same when you're not able to move. It's like the difference between a rocking chair versus a static chair. And a lot of it, I think, is about expectation, because when you get it on a bicycle, you expect it to move. And so when you get on the MP1 platform with the Infinity technology, you get that same level of movement. 6 degrees side to side, 9.5 inches fore and aft. And what that does is it creates an experience that is just so much more enjoyable, so much more fun than being on a static trainer. When you look at the design of the MP1 platform, it's not just designed for the H3 trainer by Ceres. It's also designed to be compatible with almost every new smart trainer currently on the market. So if you don't own the H3, but you have your own trainer at home, odds are this will be compatible with the MP1. Another unique feature of the Infinity technology on the Ceres MP1 platform is that it's best in class. You have 6 degrees of side-to-side motion and 9.5 inches of fore-aft motion. That's movement that specifically replicates what you feel outdoors, and there's no other competitor on the market that can simulate that type of movement. It's certainly not the kind of movement that you can get by just putting tennis balls under your trainer. You know, cycling isn't just about your legs and your lungs. It's also about being able to handle the bicycle, and that takes a lot of control in both your core as well as all of these small stabilizer muscles. On an indoor trainer that is static, you're just not getting any of that specificity. But with the Infinity technology built into the MP1 platform, you are able to use and have to use all of those stabilizers to control the bicycle. The net effect is that not only do you get a workout for your legs and your lungs, but you also get a workout for your core. The Infinity technology built into the MP1 platform creates the best-in-class movement for any trainer system. You've got 6 degrees of side-to-side movement, 9.5 inches of fore-aft movement, and the net result is way more comfort, way more fun, the ability to use your core or stabilize your muscles, and you've got a platform that is compatible with most trainers.
Welcome back. Pro Men just finishing up here in the Echelon Racing League, where Mason Roca took an incredible lead in the last, we'll call it 200 meters, to get away from Zach Nair and Martin Herberg. Second and third on the day. Nicholas Van Hagen ending up in 4th place, with Kevin Bouchard-Hall slipping in for a 5th. A big effort from Bouchard-Hall late. Didn't pay off for him and the Restart Racing team today, but we'll see more of them because he's got other riders like Jaden Yeager down in 8th place that are knocking on the door of getting this right in the Echelon Racing League. Great ride for Kellison into 6th as well. And then some familiar names like Brian Hunt in 9th place, now riding with the Wahoo LaCole team, a new addition to the Echelon Racing League. And Neil Ostenfeld, another familiar name, rounding out our top 10 with the Next eSport presented by Insured Team. But a great ride for Roca. Chad, I think if the women were watching that one, the lesson is don't be overly excited about launching your sprint. You got to be patient on the closing laps. Inside those last 5 kilometers, it just gets really chaotic out there.
I think the thing that's most telling, Brad, is the watts per kilogram put out by Roca relative to everybody else. Everybody was 4.4 watts per kilogram or higher. He only did 3.6. He just saved his bullet for the end of the bike race.
Most effective guy out there. Again, it's not always the strongest, especially on RGT. Sometimes it's the most efficient and smartest racer today. That was Roca, so he'll take a win in our elite men's category. Still waiting on our hand and paracyclists to make it inside their last 10 kilometers. Just over 12K left for the paras and about 19K, coming up closer to 18K for the hand cyclists over on the left-hand side of the screen. Now, also getting ready for our elite women's race coming up here in just minutes. They'll launch on the same Sunny King crit course that our elite men were racing on, scheduled for 30 laps, just like the pro men did. And there are some of your elite women's competitors. I want to point your attention to one athlete in particular, and that is the dominant force in women's virtual racing right now. That is Jackie Godby in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Godby, one of the top virtual racers, not just in the country, but in the world. She was, without a doubt, the strongest rider of Echelon Racing League Season 1 and 2, and now she's looking to reestablish her dominance here in Season 3. So there's no question that Jackie Godby is the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room for our elite women's race.
How iconic that Jackie's got that prestigious jersey off to her left and her right.
Godby was another rider selected for the Esports World Championships last year, and got to expect to see her back this year.
It's interesting too, Brad, that you'll notice that a lot of these riders, it looks like they're going hard at the start. They're preparing for this race as if they are actually doing the Sunny King crit. What does that mean to you guys that are relatively new to the sport of bike racing or virtual racing or criterium racing? When you do a violent effort, which is what a criterium is, if you're doing a violent effort, you have to warm up for it. There's something what we call as coaches lactate buffering. You don't want to go into a criterium and just be totally cold, because if you do, you're going to spend the first 20 minutes of it trying to buffer, trying to recalibrate your body. So a lot of these women, as you can see, and this is a great shot by the production team, is to see that these women are actually going hard and doing what we call short little intervals to get your legs and your body prepared for the violent effort that's to come.
They've just left the start line with, looks like, Aaron Ayala getting an early lead. Here comes Godby on the front, though. Won't be long. Jackie Godby with the Stars and Stripes jersey in the game, your esports national champion, as well, as if she needed more things to add to her Palmars. We're going to talk a lot about Jackie Godby's racing Palmars, but we should also recognize her Palmars off the bike, a dual MD PhD in radiology. Godby has moved like 4 times in just the last season as she has moved around the country for different residencies and studies. So Jackie Godby, just an incredible person all around.
Yeah, you see that. That's pretty prevalent in the women's peloton. Brad and I have probably talked to more PhDs and more doctors in the women's peloton than we ever have in any other industry or any other sport. It's just fascinating to see whether they're a microbiologist or they're an exercise scientist. In Godby's case, the PhD. There's a lot of PhDs in the women's peloton. It's no different in the virtual world as well.
And there is a good look at Godby racing with the XXX Racing Athletico team. Now, it's really cool that she's stuck with that team based out of Chicago, where she originally started racing, actually came from the triathlon world. Her coach and team mentor at XXX Racing said, hey, you should give just regular bike racing a shot, and turned out she was pretty darn good at it. So Godby over the last, let's say, 3 years has become a dominant force in the virtual racing world. Got a nice setup in the Pain Cave here. This is the first time for us seeing it this season because, well, she was in a different spot last year. So between the move and training, looks like Godby's got a good setup today.
Brad, you brought up a great point. I was just getting ready to see it. Looks like she's on her tri-bike. So interesting background to Godby's past and her current state. The question becomes for elite triathletes that have a great deal of success in the actual discipline of cycling, there are some transfer overs. So, Jackie may end up having a challenge that, she's showing that she has great talent in the cycling world. Does she continue to do the swim and the run with it? That's the question.
Well, you can see the fear that Godby strikes into the hearts of these other riders. No one wants to get in front of Godby because they know Godby will just shut you down. She will crush it. So don't expect to see a whole lot of riders trying to challenge Godby straight up, head-to-head here, because they know the lesson. They know that you're not going to win the race this way. So we'll see if Godby gets away, if she gets a gap. Honestly, Chad, I think your best bet is to just wait for this split to happen, because it will happen. If you go back and look at Season 2 of the Echelon Racing League, it was all about the Jackie Godby separation that would happen in the group. So I would say the game here is just wait for Godby to force that separation and hope that you can be in that group, not if, but when the separation comes.
Yeah, she's clearly pushing the pace, and a lot of triathletes, when they first get in the sport of bike racing, they don't understand the complexity of bike racing. Meaning, a long story short, I was racing with back in the early category years of my racing. There was a number 2 ranked duathlete in the world at the time, and he just rolled on the front and destroyed everybody. But when it came down to it, he ended up 42nd in the bike race, and he couldn't figure out why. It's because guess what, Paul? You were dragging us around the entire race, and none of us had to expend any energy. That's something new that triathletes have to learn, is the dynamics and the chess match that goes in a bike race.
See a lot of that in our lower category races too, as riders starting to get into virtual racing. In this block of racing today, we also have our men's B category racing on a separate virtual course. It's the exact same course, but they're not in the same sort of virtual world, I guess, is the way to describe it. But this is where you'll see riders now on the right-hand side of your screen. These are guys that are trying to make it into the elite ranks in the Echelon Racing League. So kind of like Category 3 or Category 2 on the road. We call it men's B in virtual racing, but these are the guys trying to make it to the next level.
Yeah, and that's prevalent in a lot of races that aren't sanctioned, that they'll decide to use the ABC, very much like collegiate racing. So it's great to see that, that's an equal opportunity for a bunch of different types and abilities of riders to race, whether it's from hand cycling, para, or lower category racing.
So this is an American with a little bit of a gap. Fletch. The other fun part about B-level racing is you get to learn all about the riders. Most of these guys, I have no idea who they are because, well, they're unknowns trying to make it up to the elite ranks. So looks like this guy solo off the front.
Yeah, Fletch is definitely hitting the throttle and putting everybody else on the back foot, as we like to call it. So Fletch is getting gobbled up by somebody from behind. Looks like Bird. Jay Bird now gotten on, or maybe that's Daniel. So you got Bird, Daniel, Väisänen. A lot of Nordic countries are racing today.
It's a good observation. I'm not sure where the Finland delegation came from, but it seems like RGT caught on big in Finland and apparently Sweden as well.
Sweden? I was just getting ready to say Sweden, Finland.
So this is Bjarhead at the front right now with a little bit of a gap. Not quite enough to call it a breakaway just yet. Much bigger international representation in our elite women's field. It's really cool to see riders from all over the world, including, you see all those German flags on there? That is the Rose Beast Mode team. That is another returning team to the Echelon Racing League, a team that followed Season 2 with us last year and enjoyed it so much that they're back for more. This is Team SZ's Bjarhead on the front right now.
Doesn't look like she's in too much trouble right now. It is fascinating to watch everybody's little pain cave and where they do their work. It gives you an insight into, some people like just doing it in a garage. Just give me a light, a dim light, and a trainer in a cool room and let me just lay it out. So Bjarhead has definitely decided she's going to use the her little pain cave happens to be the garage where other people like bougie lights and all. So it's a testament to somebody's, maybe their temperament as well.
Bjarhead, another doctor in the field here, a doctor of philosophy.
Oh, goodness gracious. Boy, I'd like to sit down and have a conversation after the race and hear all about that.
Certainly an entertaining group ride companion, I can imagine. Here's one of our Germans, Julia Valkenhurst, part of that beast mode presented by Rose team, one of the more dominant women's squads in virtual racing. They have the ability to recruit really strong talent, so I think that's going to be one to watch today.
Nice little profile. Again, a little bit different with Valkenhurst, her view of what she's seeing inside of her little pain cave. It's not a garage. Evidently, it's like her little room that she's set up, maybe a family thing where they all get in there and they do their thing. Obviously, we could see a little bike on the side, but Valkenhurst is definitely taking those levers and pushing out some big-time watts.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges for indoor riders, for virtual riders, is trying to stay cool, maintaining your body temperature. That's why these fans are so important. You'll see almost everybody has a fan on them. And the riders that are racing outside actually consider it to be a pretty good advantage, whether they're racing in like a cooler garage or basement. Sometimes, it's not going to be 30 freezing outside, but it may be 40, 50, 60 degrees Fahrenheit. That's a huge difference compared to a 70-degree room, a 75-degree living room if you're racing inside. So they're trying to stay cool for those riders. That's why you'll see so many riders in the garage. One, because it's hard to convince the other people in your house to let you set up a trainer anywhere else in the house and just leave it set up all the time. Sometimes the garage is just the most convenient place to put the trainer. But two, the temperature, the ambient temperature where you're riding does play a big part in it as they try and maintain their body temperature.
Brad Soner, the meteorologist. Well done, sir.
You know, that's something that I would have never considered until 2 seasons of Echelon Racing League under my belt.
Yeah, there's the irony behind that is when I had my training centers is, again, Gabi goes again, is that we would literally have to open up the doors on the second floor when the temperature was 25 degrees outside. And it would be cool enough in the room of, say, 20 people that were training, very similar to this situation. At 5 feet in the air, the temperature would be 65, and at 6 inches, it would be 32. So all their toes would be cold, but they would still be warm. And that goes to that ambient temperature. You have to keep your core temperature low, and it's no different in indoor training and indoor racing.
The other thing you have to deal with in virtual racing is sweat management, because you sweat a lot on the trainer. That's why you see so many riders with towels wrapped around their shoulder. You just sweat so much, and since you don't have that evaporative cooling of the wind blowing on your face riding in real life, it just sort of pools on you, and so it creates some, we'll say, sweaty finishes for a lot of riders out there.
And again, it's truly a lot of these riders have their own older trainer bikes because sweat is highly corrosive, and when you're sweating that much, that's a tendency to get in your headset, get in your head tube, and your handlebars. So yeah, you really have to clean up your bike pretty well after a hard ride. As you can see, one of our riders right now has got the window full open to get the fresh air in. Erin Ayala from Velocity Vixen. Brad, got the window cracked a little bit. One would think that she's at a northern climb.
Yeah, Erin is another return athlete here in the Echelon Racing League out of Minnesota, you called it.
Minnesota,
a sports psychologist.
Oh,
so
gosh,
this is a little something about how to get through days like this, yeah.
I wonder if she does self-talk.
See, Ayala's set up here, the fan behind her, and then
tailwind.
Little training table in front. I see the cell phone there. I think that's just running Spotify, though. I think she's just listening to some tunes right now.
I think she's got it flipped over for no distraction. We'll have to get the down low on that, but I don't think she wants to know what's going on that phone. The only thing she's focused on is Godby, who's up the road again.
And now Godby getting a little space on the front here. Ayala, the only one going with her. Now, Ayala knows exactly what Godby's doing here. Yeah, go ahead, Chad.
Yeah. Remember how, when we're doing commentary together, it's like, how many times do you kind of look at a rider attack you and attack you and attack you, and eventually you're just like, all right, there's nothing else I can do. Godby's whatever. I just cannot measure against the efforts that Godby keeps pushing out. And right now, Ayala's trying to make that decision. I mean, it is a super hard thing to do, to constantly cover somebody that keeps counterattacking you.
We talked about those watts per kilogram, the ratio that you were talking about. In the bottom right screen, it shows the watt per kilogram number. It's about 3.5 for most riders right now. But you see Godby hovering closer to 4, 4.5, sometimes touching 5. Most of these riders, Chad, at this point will know exactly what their limit is. They know how long they can do a certain watt per kilogram. They know what their maximum wattage is. And if Godby tries to take you there, you just can't go, because just like your car, once you blow that engine up, it's over. Once you crack your engine block or blow a piston, there's no coming back from that. And so just like when you go too hard in bike racing, when you redline, it's really hard to recover from that. And so they have to be careful to make sure that follow Godby too deep into the pain cave.
Experience. That's really what it comes down to. the more youthful, exuberant riders will take off and try to measure and try to match Godby's effort. But in the end game, you know, it's conservation of energy, and it's also placement throughout the series. So do you really want to burn yourself up in the first 20 minutes of a race, realizing that you cannot maintain and you cannot continue with this type of effort? You know, I've seen it so many times on big time climbs and big races. You know your limit. And if you do not listen to your body, you run the risk of finishing 20th, 30th, or not at all. So it really goes back to what Brad was saying about, hey, how much energy do you put in this effort matching somebody who might be clearly superior to you? That's a tough thing, a tough pill to swallow.
All right, so Godby and Ayala are your two front runners out there right now, although Godby giving herself a clear lead over the rest of the group. Looks like Ayala going to end up back at the front of the group here. You can see that distance. So Godby already starting to pick up some lap traffic out there, starting to lap riders on this Sunny King crit course. And meanwhile, Ayala, Embring, and Bjarhead all linking back up together to try to figure out what to do about the great Jackie Godby.
183 beats per minute, putting out 400 watts. That is absurd. And it's interesting, Brad, look at her cadence. I mean, it's down in the 70s, and now she's ticked up towards the 80s. Obviously, you know, probably on that climb. But she seems to be more comfortable, and some triathletes are more comfortable at a lower cadence than actual crit racers. Most crit racers average 90 to 95 in a criterium. Godby, since she's solo, she's settled into a cadence that she's comfortable with.
Godby just rides on another level than the other riders out here. And these numbers are legit. She's been tested and retested. There's multiple step verification processes on every platform that Godby races on. She's passed all of them. So we know that these numbers are legit. She can turn those numbers out in real life. There is no glitch. There is no hacking. There is no, it's legit. It's pure wattage that Jackie Godby is putting out right now. That's what makes her such a great triathlete, and that's what makes her such a great virtual racer.
Yeah, that would be hard to compete against somebody that can put up that much power for an extended period of time. I mean, literally, I'm not sure how she is on the run or the swim, but I guarantee it is a difference maker when she is, if she's a long course athlete, to be able to put out that much power for that extended period of time.
And it looks like these riders trying to work together. McGregor, Dorr are here trying to get something together to hopefully lift this tempo and bring Godby back. But the problem is that gap is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It was 150 meters when we started talking about it. She's up to 250 meters away now. And if she keeps this up at this rate, she's going to go a lap up on this group. She's going to go all the way around this course and catch into the back of this group if she keeps building this gap as quickly as she has.
Well, I guess the question now begs, Brad, do these women realize that either A, the race is over, or if they work together, they bring it back? So at this point, this group is either fighting for second or trying to bring back the break. It happens to be Godby. So you do have some kind of contentious moments in this group. Some are more, happy with getting second. Others are more motivated by bringing Godby back. But if you're constantly pummeled by Godby week after week after week, it seems to me that you'd have this quiet resolution of going, okay, now we're racing for second instead of trying to bring Godby back.
As Godby continues to widen her lead, looks like we are getting into some finishes in our hand cycling competition. This will be Kuman staying away solo, able to hold off Kavalnin on the day. Remember, Kuman and Kavalnin riding together for the first half of the race, but looks like Sam Kuman has made the separation now as he goes inside the last half kilometer of racing, and that'll be a win at the front of the men's H3 classification. Kavalinen going to end up second. I don't see any threat of that changing. And then looks like third locked in with Andre as well. That'll be third overall. He'll win our H4 category individually. But Kuman going to be our overall winner. There he is. What a machine.
I know, right? Both man and bike or hand cycle. It's interesting, Brad, when I did the World Championships, that some of these guys can put out more than able-bodied cyclists on a sprint at the finish.
Koeman looks like he could put out about 4 times as many watts as I can put out in a sprint.
Look at those guns. I mean, the guy is jacked. Incredible effort.
The other thing you notice, see that little bit of flex in the crank arm right there? That's just pure power that he's putting in. And they actually put a little bit of a dampener on there to try and stiffen that up a little bit. But Koeman in and done. He will take the first win in the Echelon Racing League Season 3 hand cycling competition. Great ride for Sander Koeman, your race winner today for the ASC Olympia team. He'll add another win to his Palmares here in the Echelon. And what's the first thing you do after a big win, Chad? Got to start recovering.
Got to start that recovery, and it begins with nutrition. Get that fat, get that carb, get those proteins in.
Talk to me about why he's eating so quickly afterwards. When I finish with a big workout, putting something in my mouth is the last thing that I'm thinking about. But these guys quickly, why is that?
Brad, there's two kind of mindsets from athletes. It's really especially in criterium racing or short track mountain bike racing, you go so deep and so hard that your stomach is under some sort of distress. And a lot of riders just simply can't eat for at least an hour. And that's part of the problem about recovery. But look, you saw Koeman, he was able to get some food in immediately. What's preferred? 45-minute window. Get something in quick as you possibly can. With such violent efforts, a lot of people's stomachs just aren't capable of taking anything in, and they have to go hours before they can eat. And a lot of the athletes that I've coached in the past, even the world-class riders, after a crit, they're like, they can't eat for 2 or 3 hours later. And of course, that's the worst thing that you could do as far as recovery goes. So there's kind of two camps, but really your physiology will tell you what you really can do. But what you should do is obviously recover quickly and get that food in.
Looking at Olympic silver medalist Joe Bernier here in second position, just behind Charles McDonald. So Bernier and McDonald, both very, very talented cyclists. There's a little hello from Joe.
Yeah,
nice little wave to the camera. Nice to see you out here racing as well.
That's no different than some of the big races that we've done when we get up there and do a quick flyby with the camera. They'll wave at the camera. Well done by Bernier.
I actually raced against this guy once in my career in one of my very first Category 5 races at a series of races called Super Week up in Wisconsin. I had the chance to race against Joe as a Category 4. He absolutely smoked me. I was out the back in like 3 laps as Joe continued to put pressure on the front. So this guy is single-handedly responsible for ending my racing career. I sold the bike and hung it up after that, after getting dropped out of a beginning level crit because Joe went too hard on the front. I just had to retire after that one.
Well, Brad, the beauty of Cat 5 and Cat 4 racing in both men and women, you can go to the start line and think, oh, I'm absolutely going to crush that person. Next thing you know, they're at like top 3 and you're like, how did that happen? They don't look like they can race their bike. Aha. The bike is the great equalizer.
Back to the front of our elite women's field here as Bjorhead continues to try to bring back Jackie Godby solo off the front here. Looks like the European riders starting to link up here, seeing a lot of, this is like the EU forming to try to figure out what to do about Jackie Godby up the road. The Germans, the Swedes, the Finns all getting together and seeing if they can try to bring this one back. Looks like we got 3 of our Swedish riders up in the SIS Zoom room right now. Nice look in for them. Dinner time in Sweden. It is just before 5:30 p.m. What they would call, I guess, 17:30.
Yeah. There we go.
If you're into the European style of time telling, we do work in kilometers here in RGT, so maybe it's only fair that we tell time in the European standard.
As Americans, why don't we adopt the 1730 of the kilometers? But that's an argument for another day. In America, there's 2 5:30s. In Europe, there's only one 17:30. As Lunden comes to the front. I'll tell you what, the Swedes
does look like
we've got 4 Swedish riders all over the front, but are they? Does it look like they're working well together, Brad? I mean, obviously the gap is still kind of keeps growing each lap.
Yeah, it's tough to tell whether or not they're working well together in the game just because of how hard it is to place yourself. In a group like this, it's really hard to put, let's say, 4 riders on the front. In a scenario like this, it's just too difficult to try and line all those riders up because the game kind of places you into the best draft. And so it makes it difficult to really try and control the field. So really the only metric that we have to gauge how they're doing against Jackie Godby is watching that gap, seeing if it's growing or shrinking. It's growing. It's at 500 meters, the new gap right now. Call it 650. She picked up another 100 meters. So what you're really looking at is the progress that they're making in bringing back Jackie Godby, and it's not going well for the riders back in the field. Godby is still laying on the watts. Even though she's leading this race, she's at the front. She's got almost half-lap lead at this point, but take a look in the upper left corner of her gameplay screen, that number 274, 300, 330 right now. When that goes red, that tells you that she's getting into her maximum power, maxing out the power that she can put in, and it's happening a few times. So Godby is not letting up here. Look at the intensity. For a rider that is leading this race by almost a half lap, she certainly looks concerned, doesn't look very relaxed to me, Chad.
Well, here's a theory that I have that I'm going to throw out there. This is the first race. She's got a gap. And what better way to get data for her coach, assuming that she has a coach, is to go out there and give you your 50-minute or 45-minute FTP test. That could be what she's doing right now. She looks like she's got a big gap, so why not keep it on the pin, get great data this early in the season, and go from there. FTP standing for functional threshold power. And usually, most people do a test that's 20 minutes, but if you truly want to know what your true functional threshold power is so that you can set your training zones, it's an hour. Who wants to do an hour test? Well, it looks like Godby clearly wants to do an hour test.
It's incredible what these riders have been able to do with the data, even over the last 3 years. I know you as a coach have always used this to try to help guide your athletes in sort of figuring out how to train for maximum efficiency and then how to race for maximum efficiency as well. But I have to imagine having more data points like this. It used to be, Chad, to get this data, you had to go into like a lab or a training center, someone like you that would be able to measure that kind of stuff. But now you can do it from home 6 days a week.
Yep, exactly. I mean, it's the technology, because of that, that word that we never want to use again ever in our entire lives. It begins with a C and ends in a D. Really, it changed the game and the landscape for indoor training, both not only visually, but structurally for coaches. So yeah, we could take something like this. And if I, under an assumption that, hey, if I'm Godby's coach, hey, if you're having a great ride, doesn't matter about the result, go out there and give me data and metrics, because nothing motivates anybody more than being in a race scenario. That's where you get some of your peak power averages for the entire year is through a race scenario. And Godby right now is probably giving her coach some great early season data points for not only 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but 20 in an hour.
We've heard some reports of riders whose coaches were watching the Echelon Racing League, just watching as spectators at home, and they would text the athletes during competition and say, "I didn't tell you to go this hard. This is you need to lay off the gas." But once you get into that racing mode, you can't let up. Racers want to race, and they're going to race. And so, yeah, it's a great way to simulate that the in real life effort that you just can't get doing it by yourself. You can't push yourself to that level, but sometimes the coaches will say, you need to take a day off. I didn't tell you to go this hard. But once you get into a race scenario, there's nothing you can do to hold these riders back.
In no world, Brad, do these two statements come together. Hey, I need you to go easy, and hey, coach, I'm pinning a number on. Those two things do not exist in the same world.
Just something about lining up next to another bike racer. One of my favorite jokes, when the very first bike race happened, it was right after they made the second bicycle. So once you get on a bike, you want to race.
Even at the Tour de France, when they were smoking and drinking, it was still a race. So
great. All right, well, looks like things starting to
right there, Brad. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, it's just a great view about how each rider not only physiologically races their bike, but mechanically how they race their bike. Some riders are locked out with their arms. Some riders are kind of have like a little hitch in their arms. Some riders like to ride further back. Some are up and down all the time. Some like to stay seated. So that's a great shot right there for everyone to get an idea of just how each one of these racers approaches this Echelon Racing League RGT event.
One of the most unique things about Jackie Godby is that she rides on a time trial bike when she's racing in the virtual world. Most of these riders are on road bikes, which don't have the extended arms that go forward past the handlebars over top of the front wheels. There's a few other differences between a time trial bike and a road bike, but that's going to be one of the biggest differences that you see. The other would be in the position that you have. A time trial bike is made to do one thing, and that's go fast in a straight line. Since you don't have to physically turn on these virtual platforms, there's really no reason to have a bike that's made to turn, so you don't need the fit to be able to turn. Godby can lock into that power. She doesn't use the aero bars a whole lot. She doesn't rest her forearms on those bars, but it is interesting to see Godby riding on a time trial or triathlon bike when most riders are on more road-specific bikes.
Yeah, and she's not only that, that's a great point, Brad, but there's another thing, aerodynamics. That's what those bikes are designed to do, is they're designed to cheat physics by slicing through the air. Well, she doesn't really have to worry about that. That kind of physical component is very hard to implement into a virtual world. And yeah, I mean, the position she's on, again, it goes back to maybe she's just, hey, give me some great data in a time trial or a triathlon position, but the other two things simply don't calculate here, and that's wind and the other thing you were talking about, the difference between the road bike and a tri bike.
Now, bike and gear choice in the game does matter. You can select from different frames, different wheels, different helmets, and those all have a different drag coefficient. So you do need to pick out the right gear in the game, but obviously the bike that you ride in real life, there's no way to measure your wind resistance yet. I should say there's no way yet, because as technology changes, I never know what they're going to come up with next. For those that have never ridden in one of these virtual races, or you're not familiar with the setup that they have, these riders are on what are called smart trainers. So these are new to the market really over the last, let's say, 5 years. It's an interactive two-way communication with the trainer. So one, we're reading the power that the riders are putting in. That's what powers their avatar on the screen, their video game character. But then there's another element that sends data to the rider's trainer. So as they go into things like a corner, they go up a hill, they get behind a rider, it changes how hard or how easy it is to pedal the bike. So when you're going uphill, the trainer puts more resistance on and makes it harder to go up the hill. When you get behind a rider like Chrome here, like you see Ayala is doing, it'll make it easier for Ayala when she's in the draft of Chrome in second position. So there's two-way communication between these trainers, one that reads the power that you're creating and one that sends back feedback based on where they are on the course. So it's a really way to experience a course like the Sunny King Criterium in real life. Chad, that drag out of the last corner in Aniston between turns 1 and 4 coming up to the line, it doesn't seem like a big deal the first lap. It's okay after 5 laps, but once you start getting into 10, 15, 20, 25 laps and into the 30th lap, the last lap of the day, you're really going to feel that drag between turns 4 and turns 1.
Yeah, something about Aniston and the Sunny King Criterium that I found very fascinating doing the race in the past is that when they come up to the finish line, they cross the finish line, as Brad mentioned in the Pro Men's race, the left turn is almost immediate. It's like 50 meters. And you'll watch pretty much, that is the launching point for attacks, because that is where most people sit up and catch their breath. Because as you go from turn 1 to turn 2, it's slightly flat to downhill. Turn 2 to turn 3 is all, is downhill. 3 to 4 is kind of flat, and then 4 is back up to the hill. So the point at which most of the riders sit up or the attacks go is just after that turn when you come to the finish line.
down to just over 11 kilometers of racing remaining for these riders up at the front. Be right around 7 miles, a little under 7 miles. And looking less and less likely that Godby's going to come back as this gap goes up to 1 kilometer up the road right now. So that is almost a lap. She's going to be seeing the back of this group pretty quickly, and I would not be surprised to see Jackie Godby go a lap up and leave the rest of these riders racing for second place. So meet the new boss, same as the old boss in Season 3 of the Echelon Racing League.
It sounds like it's a repeat. Groundhog Day, version 3. There's an interesting component, Brad, that I think that the listeners and watchers would be intrigued by. What do you think the difference would be? And it's probably clearly obvious to everyone, but what do you think the difference would be between her taking a lap up in the virtual world versus her taking a lap up in the real world?
I would say much more likely to happen in the virtual world.
And what about the complexities of it, though? In the virtual world, I don't have to worry about getting bumped. I don't have to worry about getting hit. In the real world, when you take a lap up, all those factors come into play.
Yeah. I would say you're also exposed to more chances of something go wrong in the real world. Flat tires, exactly. Broken spokes, broken chains, things like that. Now, there are plenty of issues in the virtual world, too. If you've ever struggled with spotty Wi-Fi, well, that is a major deterrent in virtual racing. So normally when riders would be doing things like tuning their bike up and lubing the chain, pumping up the tires, for virtual racing, you're doing things like making sure your Wi-Fi router is close enough, making sure no one else in the house is watching Netflix while you're trying to race, or maybe just making sure that the temperature in your garage or room is where you want it to be. So a different set of preparations in virtual racing.
Yeah, I think Bouchard Hall might be busting that theory. We'd be curious to see what happened to him. Fletch looks like in the B race, still on the front, Brad. He's been putting out a ton of energy in this race.
Well, and he hasn't gotten away. Fletch is on the front, but it's only by a few meters. Got Millem, Daniel, Vason in there. So, well, Fletch put in a good early effort. Looks like he's paying for it now with these other riders locking into him in our men's B race on the screen right now. Just under 8 kilometers to go. Yeah, it's a little surprising to me, too. I think maybe these guys are a little nervous about, new to virtual racing, so still getting a feel for how these races are going to go, but this is turning into a good one. It's going to be really interesting to see if these guys graduate to the elite ranks later on in the season. It'll be a rude awakening going from the men's B group to the men's A group.
Fletch has been gobbled up by fellow countryman McCullum, putting out a legit 4 watts per kilogram. That's strong. So it's funny, Brad. A lot of people when they first started getting in the virtual world, Cat 1s and Cat 2s and Masters Elite would jump into the A race and get absolutely slaughtered. And there was a lot of humility that would go on into the virtual world. It's like, man, do I suck this bad? No, it's just a learning curve. You need to learn how to race the game. If you're putting out power, you're putting out power. But again, you don't have that innate ability to be able to move around a peloton and understand and calculate. So you have to kind of recalibrate your brain from standard bike racing to gamified bike racing. They're very similar, but there are also some differences as well.
That was one of the most entertaining parts of the early part of pandemic when everyone started to get into virtual racing, was watching the confident in real life racers get absolutely smoked by people that they had never heard of before, because there are some new names in this virtual racing space that, you know, maybe don't race in real life on the road, but since virtual racing is more accessible to them, it's easier to do. You can do it from your garage on a Saturday morning if you're in the United States. That brought a whole new level of competition to virtual racing, and so riders didn't really translate from in real life racing to virtual racing. We learned that it takes a special kind of rider to do well on these virtual platforms.
I'll give you a prime example with one of my athletes back during the COVID. I didn't, you know, I was kind of getting and understanding the virtual racing on any of the platforms. So my client actually called me up and I go, "Hey, did you win?" And my athlete goes, "I got dropped." I was like, "Huh? You got dropped?
Yep.
What do you mean you got dropped?" "Yep, I got dropped." And I was like, "How is that possible?" Then I started breaking it down and understanding it a little bit more. It was like, yeah, it was a full learning curve for this person as well as for me. Right, I guess really in the women's race is going to come down who snags the other two spots on the podium.
Yeah, Godby has just gone a lap up on the group. So you see her back into the field here, but that's because she's gone all the way around this 1 kilometer course, got into the back of the group, and now made her way back up to the front. So that's why you see the distance at just over 1 kilometer between first and second place, even though Godby is in the group. Technically, she's just over 1 kilometer ahead of all the other riders in the field here. So Chrome, Embring, Ayala, Bjarhead, they're all going to be racing for second here, no matter where Godby finishes in this group, because, again, she's already gone 1 lap up. Incredible riding today. And Godby hasn't changed her focus in what is now coming up on 40 minutes of racing. I think she's been in the exact same form the entire time.
And not only form, but her facial disposition. It's like, no, just clocking in and clocking out. And it's interesting, too, what Godby's doing to the peloton. What was formerly known as the chase group resolved themselves to the fact that they're racing for second or third. That peloton that was chasing settled into kind of a rhythm. They really realized that they were racing for second. So the dynamics for the race changed for them. But when Godby lapped up, Godby punched through. So now everybody's like, oh, crap, here we go again. Who's going to have enough to go with Godby or not? And I've seen people actually unlap themselves by going with the rider that has lapped the field and gone up the road again. It's rare, but it happens. So which riders have saved enough to go with Godby as she's going through and lapping the field and punching off the front again?
Going to try and roll it a second time up and around the group. Looks like Embring trying to go with her. But yeah, that focus of Godby, if you can do this for an hour in focus, you can do anything for an hour. And I think that really speaks to maybe the success that Jackie Godby has had off the bike too. If you do this for an hour, reading a PhD textbook on radiology is like a walk in the park, whether you're enjoying it or not. So speaks to her ability to suffer through some very tough situations.
And this is not to say that this is I'm an interior designer or anything like that, but I love her pain cave. It's so minimalist. It's a pipe, it's a brick wall, and it's a window. That's it.
Maybe puts you into the right mindset when you get into
right, for sure.
The pain
I'm not
cave.
Gonna be some bougie flowers everywhere. It's going to be like brick wall, computer, done.
Godby coming inside 5K to go. You can see how quickly the distance is ticking away on her screen. It's very rare that we see a rider who goes so fast that we can watch the tens of kilometers tick away in real time.
Finally some other move from Godby let us know that she's actually human today. Crazy. Incredible effort by Godby.
And one of the reasons that Godby is so good and so dominant is because she takes advantage of opportunities like this. Yes, she's going to win this race. She could do whatever she wants right now and still win this one, but she stays on the power. She stays on the training because Godby has a goal. She had a mission coming into this one, whether that's get as much training in for an hour as I can, try and win the race, whatever that is. Godby doesn't do anything lightly. And so the fact that she's still putting effort into this, even though she's 1.1 kilometers ahead of everyone else, still going into the red power zone, still maxing out her effort because she's chasing greatness. And that speaks to why Jackie Godby is the kind of person that she is and why she's gotten to where she is, both on and off the bike.
Brad, if you just simply stare at the numbers, which is what I've been doing for the past 2 to 3 minutes, in the top left-hand corner of your screen, she is literally putting out between 250 to 300 watts, not just temporarily, but consistently. You could see the heart rate drift now. She was averaging 182 for the first part of the race. Now she's down to 178. What does that mean to most bike racers? It means that your heart rate will come down as you start fatiguing, but the power is consistent, and she continuously puts out between 250 and 300. Brad, there are a lot of, and not to compare men and women, but there are a lot of men that cannot, regardless of their weight or their size, cannot put out that kind of power. That is how strong she is, regardless of sex, of how much power this woman's putting out. Pretty impressive.
Like she was tailor-made for the Echelon Racing League. So this group now down to, we'll call it 8 riders, including Godby in here. So really 8 riders in contention with Embring on the back. So this is going to sort out the last 10 positions. So this has been another split in the race where this group of, again, what we're calling 8, have made it away from the rest of the group. So Godby solo, this is 2nd through 9th place that you're seeing on your screen right now.
Do you know why that was? When Godby came through, she just blew that group apart.
Yep. Yeah, no surprise. Everyone tried to get on Godby's wheel as she was blowing by. You see a free ride up to the front and say, I'm going to jump on that freight train. But these are the only riders that were able to stick it. Here's a big move coming from Carolus off the front as they go inside, or coming up to 3.5 kilometers of racing to go. So things starting to heat up in our elite women's field as Jackie Godby has gone away solo. We're also going to be checking in with our men's B race, getting down to it. They should be finishing up here pretty soon. But this is really where the action is, watching 2nd through 9th place on the road in our elite women's race, trying to see how this group is going to sort out the last 2 podium spots remaining, because Godby's already got the top step. That will not change, but someone from this group is going to be next to her on the virtual podium in 2nd and 3rd. So still haven't seen the big attacks from this group. Corolla's put some small ones into the red zone. Meanwhile, our men's B group just about to come inside their last kilometer of racing. We'll try and keep an eye on both of these as our women go inside 3K. Men's B coming inside 1K to go. Looks like McCollum has gotten to the front. Fletch dropping back to 5th position. Remember the early aggressor that made the early solo attack, and then we saw at the front last time we checked in. Looks like has now been knocked back a little bit as McCollum, Plager, and Bird set tempo up at the front here. So McCollum going to try and hold it from 800 meters out here. He's got Plager right on his wheel. Looks like Plager might pass him, and they are opening up a gap over Bird, Vesnin, and Kirby. Here comes Fletch into 4th as they go inside 600 meters to go now. 3rd, 4th, 5th place coming up behind these 2 guys. They went a little early. McCollum and Plager are going to get caught. Big move from Bird at 500 meters to go. Now they're into that turn 4. So this is that long uphill drag that they're on right now. Bird at a disadvantage because here comes Fletch from behind. The patience is going to pay off as they go inside of turn 4. And this is where it starts. Fletch back on the front. McCollum dropping back into 6th position. It'll be Plager and Bird trying to get there. Fletch into 2nd, but the German Plager launches a big one out of the last corner. The uphill drag to the line in the last 150 meters. Certainly looking good for the German here. Bozeman, the American, trying to get there into 2nd. Not going to happen today. The German will win the men's B as Plager takes the win in the Sunny King Crit men's B race.
Followed by McCollum
Back.
and Bisonen.
A great ride from Plager. The patience paid off. Back over to our elite women inside 1.9K to the finish now. This is where things will start getting chaotic in this group, just like we saw in that men's B sprint group finish. Patience is the key here, Chad. It's all about where you are coming out of that last corner here on the Sunny King Criterium course.
You've got to resist the temptation to go as soon as you make that turn at turn number 4. Godby is gone again, a lap and a quarter up, as Godby is surely going to get the win. But Brad, back to what you were saying, and I've said it in the men's race before the men's race, you have to be patient out of turn number 4. As you could see in the past couple races, if you go too early, you will get caught. So patience is the key out of turn 4. That is a great shot there of Godby, going to take the win in our women's pro elite.
And I love this. Out of the saddle with a 1 lead at 20 meters to go, and still hammers on with a hand in the air for Jackie Godby, your women's race winner in the elite women's category. And now this field going to sort out 2nd through 9th place. Looks like the Germans on the front down here as they try and figure out who's going to line up next to Godby on the podium.
Great effort by, what a great effort by Godby, taking a lap up on everybody else. And as you can see in our Echelon Racing League, coming down to the end, we are going to have a battle for 2nd and 3rd.
Valkenhorst starting the last lap of racing now. Got some company on the front. This is going to get interesting.
Oh, they are taking the whip to those whips right now.
Yep. Larson getting a little space here. The solo rider off the front now into the red power zone. She's going all in, but can she hold it for 500 meters?
Here we go out of turn 4, Brad. Is that correct, or is that turn 3?
We'll see, because if they don't hit a turn right now, that would have been 4. We're into 400 meters to go.
Yep, one more turn.
I think they'll have one more. That'll be turn 4. And this takes us into the home stretch. See how they slowed down? See how the hill starting to take its toll? Ayala sprinting early. She's got the Velocity Vixen teammate with her trying to go as McGregor, Bronwyn McGregor, trying to get to the front here into 3rd position. Valkenhorst still there. Ayala to the front.
Oh,
and I
she's
think
got a gap
Ayala
right now, Brad. She's gone.
And she will hold on. The American will take 2nd place on the day for the Velocity Vixen team. And Bjarhead ends up in 3rd for the Swedes. But what a ride for Erin Ayala. A 2nd place field sprint win for the Velocity Vixen rider. Congratulations to Erin Ayala. That is a big result for Erin, a rider that has been hunting these Echelon Racing League competitions for the better part of 3 seasons now. That's got to feel good for Erin Ayala, getting a field sprint win today.
Yep, she's probably going to open up that window a little bit,
Hey,
Brad, and
Jackie,
get that
can you
minus
hear me?
20-degree temperature.
Can you hear me?
It sounds like we are getting ready to grab a word with Jackie Godby as Erin Ayala cools down. Looks like Godby getting ready for her post-race interview as our last riders finish up in the elite women's race, wrapping up the 2022 Sunny King Virtual Criterium here. And again, Chad, racing on in real life courses. We are so excited to be back May 6th for the in real life Sunny King Criterium.
What a great venue. Fabulous venue. Good Southern tradition race. It's one of probably the longest existing races in the Criterium space.
All right, well, sounds like we've got Jackie Godby in our SIS room. Let's head over and try and grab a word with our race winner, Jackie Godby.
First one for the Echelon Racing season this year. Can you talk to me about your mindset going into this race? You got out on an early lead pretty early in the race. Can you talk about your mindset going into it?
So the mindset was really in a different place this year. Once again, I've moved across the country. I'm now in St. Louis. And this was actually, my first race coming back from being sick. So I was on board with my coach, and he's like, don't go in with expectations. Go in, prioritize your health first, prioritize having fun first. You can't have a season if you start off the race and just hit a wall, hate it, don't have fun, and get sick again. So I really started off the race with that in mind, remembering that I'm lucky to be here. This is something I love to do. And a couple laps in, the breakaway stuck. I was feeling good. I was having fun. I was hitting those sort of internal personal goals that we talked about. And I said, okay, I'm going to take a chance. Like, let's see if my body can handle this. And, I'm really, really lucky. I had my husband, John, the doctor in the room, keeping a set of eyes on me, keeping me honest. And we had fun. I hit great. I had a great race, and that's really exciting to start the season off that way.
You're talking about after the breakaway. Even after the breakaway, you were still managing about 4 or 5 watts per kilogram. Can you talk about how hard that is and how difficult that is to maintain at a steady level? The power that you were doing.
I'm really able to do as a heavier rider, as a bigger rider, is I've really focused on using my climbing, getting up out of the saddle, using my weight, using my power. And I think on a flatter course like this, where we had these shorter 40-second, minute segments where I was just able to get up, get to that higher zone with a nice lower cadence, and then rest. And again, that's a very nice way to mentally break it up, make sure I'm still having fun, check in with myself. So I think this was a really great course in that respect.
Win under your belt now, how are you going to celebrate?
Chocolate.
Do you have any on you?
Oh, yes. Yes, we have the fresh
Oh.
So, well, thank you so much, Jackie, and congratulations on the win. Brad,
thank you so much. You guys have a great day.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jackie. Thank you very much, Emma, and congratulations on another well-deserved victory for Jackie Godby. She takes the win with a 4.45 average watt per kilo. Erin Ayala ends up second place at 3.2 average, and Marlene Bjarhed in third place at 4.38. I know we talked about Godby's power numbers a lot, but how about Erin Ayala, your most efficient rider out there today, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty impressive. It goes back, Brad, to what you were talking about. There's 2 methods of bike racing today. Obviously, with Godby putting out just incredibly sick numbers at 4.45 watts per kilogram. Ayala, she did the flip. She conserved energy, saved as much like our men's pro race, the winner there, is conservation of energy and using it when you need it the most. And that's what got Erin Ayala the second on today's race.
Well, this certainly sets up for an interesting stop number 2 of the Echelon Racing League as we get ready to head to Momentum Indy. They'll have a weekend off before heading to the virtual Momentum Indy for stop number 2 of the Echelon Racing League. So that's going to do it for stop number 1 today as we kick off season 3 of the ERL. For Chad Andrews, my name is Brad Soner saying thanks for watching. Congratulations to all of our winners in the virtual Sunny King Criterium. We hope to see you in person May 6th, and if not, we'll see you for stop number 2 of the Echelon Racing League.